Hi everybody, I'm Becky Roop, and this is a super special episode of Books and Beyond in honor of National Poetry Month, which is in April. So we've got a bunch of people who are going to be here reading either their own poems or favorite poems or any poem that, even loathed poems might be fun. We're going to be posting during the month of April for National Poetry Month poem starters on the library and the Swanton Writers Group Facebook pages. So anybody who wants to plunge in and write poems of their own, 30 poems in April, that would be terrific. If anybody wants to take on a really huge challenge, you could memorize a poem a day. This book, Committed to Memory, edited by John Hollander, is the 100 best poems to memorize. I'm not sure I totally agree with this because some of these poems are incredibly long. However, if you want to take a whack at this, Committed to Memory, learn poems. So I'm just going to take a turn first and do one of my poems, which is not my poem. It's by an ex-poet laureate named Charles Simic. And it's called In the Library, because this is exactly where we are, in the Swanton Library, in the squishy, comfy chairs. So, In the Library by Charles Simic. There's a book called A Dictionary of Angels. No one has opened it in 50 years. I know because when I did, the covers creaked, the pages crumbled. There I discovered the angels were once as plentiful as species of flies. The sky at dusk used to be thick with them. You had to wave both arms just to keep them away. Now the sun is shining through the tall windows. The library is a quiet place. Angels and gods huddled in dark, unopened books. The great secret lies on some shelf Miss Jones passes every day on her rounds. She's very tall, so she keeps her head tipped as if listening. The books are whispering. I hear nothing, but she does.
Hello, my name is Mike Barkin. This poem is written by my father. When they retired to Florida, one of their favorite things to do was to sit in the afternoons under the shade of their fruit trees. Every day at 4 o'clock promptly. So when they were sitting there having their evening cocktails before dinner, they would greet passers-by, everything from just people walking to bicycling. I'm no poet, but my father surely was, in his own right. So in memory of them, as they both passed away several years ago this month, I'd like to read one of his poems. So here we go. The sky is blue, the birds are singing, people go bicycling and laughing. There's so much to do and so much to see. But we like sitting under our tree. We talk of Vermont and lots of old times. Soon we'll be sitting at Whispering Pines. The fruits are turning orange. They're plentiful this year. Miss you guys, wish you were all here. Though the sky is blue, not gray, and we're happy this way, the birds keep on singing, and they're singing to say, we're having a great day.
Hi, I'm Annie Matthew, and just recently I was going through a collection of things. I didn't know what I was going to find in this box, but I found a little book of poems that were written by my mother in 1938 for her grandmother, which means she was about 16 when she wrote these. So, in honor of my mother, who passed away 3 years ago, I'd like to read these poems. The first one is called, I Wish to Remember. I wish to remember that leafless trees and howling winds all end in a singing spring, that all that seems so long and drear will pass like a swallow's wing. The spring winds, the robin's call, the lowing kine in the fields, the pounding waves and fleeting clouds, the soft grass where I kneel. The next one is called Trouble. deep, cold, wavering, rising steadily on, rolling forth with cold determination, deep and dark, unfathomable, strong, mounting upward ever till at last a line of downy foam spreads its way along the crest and hesitantly crushes the mighty wave into a sea of frothiness, white and sparkling. My mother loved nature. I think you can get that from these poems. This one is called The Brooklet. Blithely trickle, splash, and gurgle, greens the world to lustrous hue. Active ever, sleeping never, even thy ripples reflect the blue. Wind thy course through moonlit fields, reflect thy playful gleams on stars, whose innumerable silences lend a thrill to thy changing, ever-splashing powers. And the last one's a bit of a change-up. It's called Bus 1664. A blunt-nosed booby with a galvanized skin, a left front fender that a rock stove in, a low-hung chassis and a grinding gait, an old spare tire that's without a mate.
My name is Roop. I'm the director of the Swanton Public Library. I am going to be reading a poem by Wisława Szymborska, who was a Polish poet who won the Nobel Prize in 1996, I believe. Dead now, 2012. This poem is named Cat in an Empty Apartment. Die. You can't do that to a cat. Since what can a cat do in an empty apartment? Climb the walls, rub up against the furniture. Nothing seems different here, but nothing is the same. Nothing has been moved, but there's more space. And at nighttime, no lamps are lit. Footsteps on the staircase, but they're new ones. The hand that puts fish on the saucer has changed too. Something doesn't start at its usual time. Something doesn't happen as it should. Someone was always here, then suddenly disappeared, and stubbornly stays disappeared. Every closet has been examined. Every shelf has been explored. Excavations under the carpet turned up nothing. A commandment was even broken, papers scattered everywhere. What remains to be done? Just sleep and wait. Just wait till he turns up. Just let him show his face. Will he ever get a lesson on what not to do to a cat? Sidle towards him as if unwilling, and ever so slow, on visibly offended paws, and no leaps or squeals, at least to start. This is Timothy Laurel Harrison from New York, New York.
This is a poem called Here by Grace Paley. Here I am in the garden, laughing, an old woman with heavy breasts and a nicely mapped face. How did this happen? Well, that's who I wanted to be, at last. A woman in the old style, sitting, stout thighs apart under a big skirt, grandchild sliding on, off my lap, a pleasant summer perspiration. That's my old man across the yard. He's talking to the meter reader. He's telling him the world's sad story, how electricity is oil or uranium and so forth. I tell my grandson, run over to your grandpa. Ask him to sit beside me for a minute. I'm suddenly exhausted by my desire to kiss his sweet, explaining lips. This is a poem by Sharon Olds. It hangs deep in his robes, a delicate clapper at the center of a bell. It moves when he moves, a ghostly fish in a halo of silver seaweed, the hair swaying in the dark and the heat. And at night, while his eyes sleep, it stands up in praise of God. And that poem is entitled The Pope's Penis.
My name is Scott Martel. I'm going to be doing a poem, setting a poem by a local writer and friend of mine and friend of the library's, Don LaFave. A poem that debuted actually on the walls of this very location here. November 9th, 2018, there was opening reception for something called Emotion Speaks, and the topic, one-word topic, was anxiety. And Don wrote this poem, and as soon as I found out what it was about, I knew that it was very powerful, and I wanted to put it to music, which I've done, and I hope this does this, his poem justice. As much as I've been able, I have envisioned it differently. As much as I would like to understand, I cannot. It seems so wrong how it appears to be turning out. I cannot explain. I was okay alone in my private space to do or not to do. Serene void with a sense of security. A limited joie de vivre in my darkness, but suddenly a sense of angst and lost potential. Soothing sounds replaced by sharp, loud noises. Jerky movements, environment unfamiliarly acidic. I am on first alert with a feeling of helplessness. In my vulnerability, I am no match for the hurtful. Gravitational pull and tearing and harsh light. The sense of betrayal, it feels complete. And I have no choice but to give into an unfamiliar greater power. The sense of betrayal feels complete, and I have no choice. The sense of betrayal feels complete, and I have no choice.
Okay, I'm Sir Richard of Moores, Moores, New York. And this poem is a seasonal poem. It's called A Rustling of Leaves. Seasons sally round the year, like changes of the guard, as denizens in the north observe the orbits of the stars. Young and old huddle round in winter's kiss of cold. Summer's green is lush and hot, with trees diverse and bold. Fall is color festival, a tapestry in taste. But spring holds sway of pleasantries, warm breeze upon your face. Then frogs dig out to harmonize in celebration glee, and augur of a coming joy, the first rustling of the leaves. This one is called The Crossing. I traversed the lake named Champlain on ferry deck so wide, with robins blue above me, frost now at my side. A life in times like celluloid frames revealed to me in prose, and poetry from days gone by, meter, rhyme, and woes. Docked upon welcome shore, a transit made sublime, I set dear Frost's life aside to motor into mine. This is called The Waiting Room. She caught his glance, eyes cast to the floor. Covertly at her heels, she deduced he wanted more. Her legs she crossed and looked the other way, smiled in her mind, his captivity would stay. And toy with him she did, in her feminine way. And oh, the gods he thanked to this very day.
Hi, my name is Chloe Viner. I'm a local Vermont poet, and I'm here to read some of my poems. So I've written 4 books. I picked one poem from each book. So this poem is from my first book, Naked Under an Umbrella, and I'm going to read a poem called Closets or Classrooms. The closet is her Narnia. Between wet clothes, wet coats, and leather shoes, she can't hear anything. She retreats here when the beast feels like hunting. Her teeth bared, she rips through the apartment. Carcasses of furniture and toys strewn across the floor remind her that the nurturer can also be the werewolf. She feels for the back of the closet, wishing it could fade into forest. The beast drags her out and breathes dragon breath and cascading thorns. She closes her eyes and pretends she has not woken the beast. It spits and spews, setting fire to her t-shirt, then sends her to school where children bare their teeth and back her into corners, forcing her to debate whether the closet or classroom is worse. She hides her fears in her pockets, raises her hand in class, and lets the world disappear behind the right answers. The next poem I'm going to read is from my next book, which is called What the Rain Said Last Night. I'm going to read a poem called Small Town. She flips flapjacks, takes orders, wears a faded yellow apron, dons jaded like it's her work ethic, serves up mud pies of frustration, services truckers like a mechanic swapping oil for coffee. A cheerleader 20 years later, saggy and frayed, pom-poms in the gutter with the rest of the casualties. She taps her pencil on the counter, remembers something about the mythological phoenix, one wing compassion, the other wisdom. Here, birds are found in alleys, in parking lots, and in halfway houses. She shakes her head and tosses aside the pencil, punches in her hours, sweeps up bird carcasses and twisted radios, goes home. Tomorrow, the holy mess is made again. I'm going to read a poem from my third book called 27 Apples, and this poem is called Waiting. You talk to me the way that rain talked to a 50-year-old wooden banister, soaking into seams, filling holes, drops pooling over the edges of the beam. In the summer of your silence, dry wood cracked into splinters, like an elderly man's knuckles, slivers of that silence aged like a wine or a cheese, but no delicacy or subtle variations in that passage of time, everything muted. Quiet crumbles in my mouth like stale pastry, sugar crystallized into snowflakes slide down like raindrops on the banister, siphoned off. All that's left, a pale shell of wood. I am left pacing in the dry dirt, waiting for the rain. Or am I waiting to hear you talk to me again? And then lastly, I'll read a poem from my book that just came out in November called Dandelions and Defiance. And I'm going to read a poem called Rancher. Some days I have to wrangle my desire to kill myself, like a rancher with cattle, roping off each runaway thought, tying knots around stubborn, straining necks, thick with muscle from too many years of use, thoughts bucking and writhing, determined to break free, drenched in mud and sweat, straining against barn doors like Atlas holds the world, relief in the form of continents out of reach, replaying my weakness like an old Western film, knowing that in the end only one of us will stand, gun raised. On good days, I'm the lone hero, an out-of-towner riding a horse from auction. On others, the trespasser, standing in dirt roads waiting for gunslingers to finish me off, dreaming of sweet relief in blood and soil.
Hi, I'm Virginia Holloman. I'm going to read a poem by Jenny Joseph. It's kind of a fun poem. When I'm an old woman, I should wear purple with a red hat that doesn't go and doesn't suit me. And I shall spend my pension on brandy and summer gloves and satin sandals, and say we have no money for butter. I shall sit down on the pavement when I'm tired and gobble up samples in shops and press alarm bells, and run my stick along the public railings and make up for the sobriety of my youth. I shall go out in my slippers in the rain and pick the flowers in other people's gardens and learn to spit. You can wear terrible shirts and grow more fat and eat 3 pounds of sausages at a go, or only bread and a pickle for a week, and hoard pens and pencils and beer mats and things in boxes. But now we must have clothes that keep us dry and pay our rent and not swear in the street, and set a good example for the children. We will have friends to dinner and read the papers, but maybe I ought to practice a little now, so people who know me are not too shocked and surprised when suddenly I am old and I start to wear purple. This is a poem I wrote about a friend, and the name of it is PTSD. How I wish to banish the horror from your eyes, the tears from your cheeks, and the dark visions from your dreams. To purge the war, the sights, the sounds, the killing, the dying, the betrayals, the friendships lost, all from your soul. Vermont innocence was torn away without mercy, replaced with a cold mistrust and suspicion, a self-preservation technique that keeps those who love you at a safe distance. Sometimes your warmth and sweetness, humor and gentleness sneaks out as if to tease and capture a heart, but then unfailingly retreats back into the dark, breaking my heart as it goes. The Peace of Wild Things by Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. And for a time I rest in the grace of the world, and I am free. This one was written by a friend, Peter Hart. Once when I was younger, someone very special made me a wondrous gift. I didn't know why or care that much. I just loved it, and it warmed me. I didn't know why the pieces fit together. Some were beautiful, some less so, and some just hard to understand. But I loved it, even the parts that didn't seem to fit. Altogether, it was glorious and held my heart. I'm sorry my pieces don't fit, or make sense, or are beautiful, but I want to hold your heart like your quilt held me, long after I thought you were gone forever.
Hello, my name's Finley Gelsomina, and I've brought some poems that I've wrote. I thought about giving context to this one, but it's poetry. You don't need context. So this one's called Wildfire, and I decided to name that today because I usually don't pick titles. Don't need them. Oh, they always ask me where my lady love might be, why she's not upon my arm and walking next to me. I say, my lady walks the earth and fire, a visage full of ache and ruin, her hands consuming and her feet a fearful pyre. You think you can withstand what every creature knows to flee, my lady love upon my arm and walking next to me. Oh, not even I, am built to kiss her lips, but I'll gladly burn away with her to my very tips. There into the deep dark earth owns, I'll wait until the day that green bud grows from my blackened bones, and finally upon my lady's arm, eternally I will be. This one's called Owl Girl. She was there, with uneven hair and stars on her knuckles, raised, the hair on her neck, the skin on her hands, raised, and she was there, in the corners behind your back, cracked eggshells and owl pellets. She's retching, and everyone turns away. She's reaching, but only for a handhold, not a hand to hold. She knows how the world runs, how it fails, how it lullabies, how it stiffens her hands, desperately trying to fold away those things called home and family. She was there, retching in the corner, and everyone turns away. Raising her shoulders, she speaks, and no one was raptured. But still, she was there, and her stars left marks bright and raised, and if it was anything, at least it was something, to show everyone by the smear of her blood that she was there.
Hi, my name is Judy Paxman. The name of this poem is Invisible Disability. It's very Dr. Seussish. Apologies. I wrote this before my foot surgery, but then it seemed to be appropriate even after. Here we go. For years I just hid it, and no one ever knew of the pain that's involved just to do what you do. But sometimes a problem grows too large to hide, and it just starts to fester if you trap it inside. So I shared it. I told them, I've been lying, I'm weak. I can't do all these things. I can't be what you need. I'm so sorry. I know that I'm letting you down. Please forgive me. I know how awful that sounds. But I never expected to hear what I heard. Did I misspeak when I spoke or use the wrong words? It's not hard. It's not far. Only one set of stairs. I've explained I'm in pain, but I guess no one cares. If they did, would they continue asking for more? Please don't ask me again. No, really, I'm sure. It sucks that I struggle to do the simplest of tasks, and it hurts when I have to say no when you ask. Would you ask that of someone with their leg in a brace? Do you need to see the proof of my pain on my face? Do I need to keep going till I can't go anymore? Let me rest without crushing my pride on the floor. To you it's so simple, but I've already said no. Why do you keep pushing? Can't you just let it go? So again I ask, let me rest, let me heal. Let me know it's okay to not be the one who has to do this today. Then just crickets, just quiet, no comments, not one. So I'll do it, I've got it, no problem, it's done.
I'm Becky Roop. I've got a couple more poems to read. One is from a book called Reflections on a Gift of Watermelon Pickle and Other Modern Verse. And it's a poem by a poet named Walker Gibson. I have no idea who Walker Gibson is, but I've always liked this. It's called Advice to Travelers. A burro once, sent by express, his shipping ticket on his bridle, ate up his name and his address. And in some warehouse, standing idle, he waited till he like to died. The moral hardly needs the showing. Don't keep things locked up deep inside. Say who you are and where you're going. We've had a lot of really intense poems through this session, so I'm going to end up with my signature poem from Hilaire Belloc's Selected Cautionary Verses. And this one is called Rebecca, who slammed doors for fun and perished miserably. A trick that everyone abhors in little girls is slamming doors. A wealthy banker's little daughter, who lived in Palace Green, Bayswater, by name Rebecca Offendort, was given to this furious sport. She would deliberately go and slam the door like Billy Ho to make her Uncle Jacob start. She was not really bad at heart, but only rather rude and wild. She was an aggravating child. It happened that a marble bust of Abraham was standing just above the door this little lamb had carefully prepared to slam, and down it came. It knocked her flat. It laid her out. She looked like that. Her funeral sermon, which was long and followed by a sacred song, mentioned her virtues, it is true, but dwelt upon her vices too, and showed the dreadful end of one who goes and slams the doors for fun. The children who were brought to hear the awful tale from far and near were much impressed, and truly swore they never more would slam the door as often as they had done before.